Awesome. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Bye.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get started here in a few minutes. If you're listening in, feel free to throw in the chat where you're coming from, and we'll start here in a few minutes. All right, if you're just joining in, feel free to throw in the chat where you're coming from. We'll start in the next couple of minutes. The chat is also a great place to throw any questions that you may have, and we'll try to answer those as we go along through the slides. Our first post is from Sarah. Welcome from Washington, D.C. I actually grew up about an hour from Washington, D.C. All right, I already see a great question. Can a Nigerian join West Point? As long as you have a U.S. citizen, you can get citizenship, and or you are a U.S. citizen, you can come to West Point. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the admissions brief. My name is Captain Jamal Olatunde, and I'll be giving you this brief today. So today we'll give an informational briefing talking about, a few different things. We'll talk about the West Point experience, what West Point has to offer. We'll talk about the academy itself, cadet life, and then the most important thing, in my opinion, is the application process. And then that's the most important thing because I personally am an admissions officer, so I work with specifically athlete as throughout their admission process while they're applying to the academy. I'm a 2011 grad and I'm an engineer officer back here at West Point working as an admissions officer. So coming to West Point, you'll get a few different things, but most importantly, you'll come here to be developed as a leader of character. It'll be exciting. It'll also be challenging, but in the end, it'll be very fulfilling, and you will graduate from here after your time, after your 4 years, and serve the nation and do a lot of great things as a second lieutenant in the Army. And that's really what it's all about, is service to our nation. West Point is going to prepare you to become an officer in the United States military and serve as a second lieutenant, leading sons and daughters in the military and leading them to whatever mission that you have and that you'll face. And so what it's going to take to get you there is we're going to push you to your limits. We're going to drive you academically as well as mentally. We're We're to push your limits to see how far you can go and give you an understanding of what your limits are and how they will help you get better and push those around you to get better. So what West Point has to offer. This is usually, where I talk to parents and say, hey, parents, take a look at this slide. So West Point has to offer a fully funded education, which you will receive a Bachelor's of Science degree in the major of your choice. And we'll talk a little bit about why it is a Bachelor of Science in some future slides. But what this comes with is free tuition. So West Point is fully paid for. You'll get, and including the tuition, you'll get books and fees covered. You'll get room and board, as well as medical and dental care. You also get a monthly stipend, which goes up every year that you're here. So these are some of the great things that West Point has to offer that you won't get too much at any other school. So West Point is also, big on being a leadership development school. We are the premier leadership development institution, and we take pride in that. We have many accolades, but some of the best accolades that I like to highlight are our most accessible professors. We'll talk about, the shape of what our professors look like in a few future slides, but our professors are the most accessible because how tight-knit this community is. Not only do cadets have access to their professors in the classroom, but they have access to their professors outside of the classroom, and then they have access to their professors, in our library, which is the #1 college library in the country, according to Princeton Review. When I was here in 2010, the library was brand new, and it's still looking great today. It's a great place for cadets to come, study on their own, study with groups, or find a great place to get away and find a hole and take some time to themselves. There's a number of places in the library to get a lot of things done, and this library is one of the best in the country. I also like to highlight that we have a great engineer program. We have the #3 best civil engineering program, but we're also in the top of our other engineers programs. I was a mechanical engineer, and we have some of the top facilities to enjoy and to learn about engineers, civil and mechanical engineering as a student. And this is, the end all that comes with graduation is 100% job placement. Not everybody, not all of your peers, not all of your friends will graduate college and know that they're going to graduate with a job. Some may not. But when you graduate from West Point, you will commission to serve as an Army officer and a leader of character in the United States Army, and there's 100% job placement when you do get through that 4 years. So before I move into any job fields and some branch opportunities, I'll take a look at the chat. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. I already see a question here. My friend wants to join West Point. What are the requirements needed? So we have some basic eligibility requirements, but it doesn't take much to start an application. It is important to, if you are interested, to start an application because you can't get into West Point without the start of an application. So going back to our branch opportunities and job fields, we have a number of different branch opportunities that you can have after graduating West Point. If you can see on my shoulders, I have the Engineer Castle, which is my branch, and if you see any officers wearing this uniform, you'll see their branch on their uniform. And so I was branch engineers coming out of West Point, and it was I say it's the best branch in the Army, the best branch the Army has to offer. But there are a number of branches that you can join. Some typical branches that you see in movies are armor, infantry, but there are a number of other branches to include the medical corps, military intelligence, military police. Another new branch that's taking a lot of steam is our cyber branch. So there are a number of different opportunities that you can have when you are to learn about these branches when you are here, so you can make the best decision to join whatever branch it is that you may be interested in. There are also a number of subsequent career opportunities, and these career opportunities generally will come after a few years in the Army, depending on how you are standing in the Army. So the biggest thing is when you graduate is to do well, because the better you do in your first few years, the more opportunities you have for subsequent career opportunities later on. Special Forces, Civil Affairs, PsyOps, and Judge Advocate Corps are just a few of the many opportunities that you can have. So I see another question. Can you address if there's any opportunities to pursue animal science and veterinarian medicine? So unfortunately not. The best. The Army does need vets, and it's important to the Army. But the best opportunities for those are through ROTC programs who do have those programs. So here's a little bit about West Point. So West Point, has a lot of history, and it's important to know the history, especially when you get here as a new cadet or as a plebe. President Jefferson established West Point in 1802, and it was America's first military academy and school of engineering. In 1817, Thayer established a curriculum, and West Point continued to grow from 1802, and then it became the models for the Navy and the Air Force in 1845 and 1954. But one of the best things I like to highlight about this slide is how compact the campus is. As you can see, the historic plane is there on your screen, sorted towards the center, but then you have the barracks or the dormitories there to the left. And there are a number of places where you can hang out, meet with friends for classes, meet with friends for group projects throughout the whole campus, and it's a nice tight-knit community, and that's the way we like it because of how small it is. All right, so here we have a number of different leaders that you may or may not know of. Some of the biggest leaders that we have, Buzz Aldrin, first mission to the moon, class of 1961. Alex Gorski, CEO of Johnson & Johnson. Ali Villanueva, he's currently the Baltimore Ravens' defensive tackle. Coach K is obviously very well known, Douglas MacArthur. We have a lot of well-known people that have graduated here from West Point. But what I like to highlight on this slide is that no matter what it is that you want to do, whether it's you want to spend a full career in the military or you want to get out after your commitment, you will find a West Pointer anywhere that you go. Whether it's in companies, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in sports. West Pointers are everywhere, and we're all a part of what we call the long gray line. And if you're interested in anything, anywhere, you'll most likely find a West Pointer that's already been there. So it's important to be a part of this legacy, especially when moving on to your careers after you graduate here from West Point. So as we move on, if anybody finds this information helpful, please feel free to throw a thumbs up, ask any questions in the chat, and if there are no questions, then we'll continue to move on. So here's a little bit about cadet life. I try my best to use the terminology that you may understand, which is freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. But sometimes I may slip up, and I may use plebe, yearling, cow, and firstie. And so these are some of the terminologies, some of the lingo that you may hear. If you decide to make your way up here for a visit, you'll meet some plebes, some yearlings, some cows, all within a certain company. And so there's a lot of lingo that you'll learn once you get here, just know that I may say some of these things, and this is what it means. And I'll try to explain them to you as we go on. So this is what cadet life, looks like on paper, but, it's not necessarily what you may think it is. So not everybody is waking up at 5:20 in the morning. Generally, most people are waking up around 6 or a little bit after that. But some people do. I knew a few cadets, during my time that will wake up really early, get up for a run, and that would be the start to their day. But the first start to everybody's day is, of course, breakfast, which is, my favorite meal of the day. And that would start the day. Moving on to classes. So classes is generally not from 7 to 4 o'clock or 16:15, which is, the military time you see here on your screen. There are generally breaks in between to include lunch. You might have a class period where you don't have a class, and that'll give you the opportunity to go to, the library we spoke about earlier, or just, hang out in your room and get caught up on any class that you have coming up. But after that, then all cadets will go into what we call athletics. We like to say that every cadet here is an athlete, which is true. All cadets here are athletes, whether it is in NCAA sports, club sports, or intramural sports. During this time period, everybody will be playing a sport at some sort of level, which will teach teamwork, but also increase physical fitness. And then after athletics, you'll have your personal time, and that's after dinner. Generally, Thursdays are mandatory dinners. Those are spirit dinners where we'll have a spirit theme for the week, and we'll make ourselves ready for that spirit dinner of the week, depending on that. But other days, it's sometimes open dinner, where you do grab and go. And so it just depends on the day what that dinner looks like. And personal time is used for what exactly it says, personal time. And personally, I always suggest to study, meet with other cadets to work on projects. But this is also a time to relax. If you've got all your work done, it's a great time to meet up with friends, hang out, call home, which you should always do, and get caught up on other things. You have to be in your room by 11:30, but that doesn't mean you have to be asleep. But that also means that you don't have to be awake. You can go to bed as early as you want or as late as you want. I was one who turned out my main light and turned on my desk light and continued to work, just because I had a whole lot of work to do and I had to get ready for the next day. So this is what general day, Monday through Friday, will look like. So when we talk about classes, the classroom sizes are generally small. So you won't get to class and be in a big, massive auditorium filled with, students all over the place, some sleeping, some not. You'll get a very attentive 15 to 18 slides classroom, with a very intelligent professor, that is a subject matter expert in their field. So we have a few different types of professors that you'll get to interact with. We have 30% civilian professors, 20% are permanently assigned active duty Army professors. So those professors are more of your tenured professors. Some will have PhDs with higher education in their background. And then the last 50% are similar to myself, where they're military officers that will do a 2 to 3 year assignment here as a professor or as an admissions officer like myself. And those students or those professors, will have just come from their graduate degree program. For example, going to graduate school for math, and then coming to teach cadets basic math, and that's in order to keep it fresh on their mind and be ready to teach them the most up-to-date knowledge when it comes to math. And so here are our majors. We have a number of different majors. that if you're interested, you can do. I was, as I mentioned, a mechanical engineer, which was tough, but I got through it. So there are a number of different majors. You can do a number of different liberal arts majors as well. And we also have, minors offered as well. And so if you want to add a minor onto your major, you do have the ability to do that. And so if you take a look at this slide, this is the best depiction of, what your academic course load will look like. Your course load in your first 2 years will be mostly core classes. So you'll do your basic classes from, your first year here, your plebe year, to your second year here. Within your first year, at the end of your spring semester, you'll be able to select your major. It's important to select the major that you're interested in, but if you do find, that you've selected your major and, you find out, hey, this is not for me. I am not really interested in becoming a mechanical engineer, then you can switch your major. It's just something that you'll have to work out with your academic advisor to switch your major. If you want to add a minor, that's something that, you can continue to do as you progress along with your classes. Each year you'll get, an assessment of how you're doing in your classes to see, if you can increase your course load or maybe stick to your course load that you've done for your major. And so another important thing to highlight is that, you may say, hey, I just want to learn about history, and that's it. But unfortunately, but also fortunately, you'll have to take some sort of engineering sequence. So you'll see on the top of your screen in your CAL or your junior year and your first year and your senior year, an engineering sequence that will show you, that will say, hey, you are going to take some engineering courses, which allows us to give you a Bachelor's of Science, which is what we talked about earlier. And so no matter what major you choose, you will have to take 3 engineering classes throughout your time here. So before I get into sports, are there any questions that we may have in the chat? If you're liking this information, if you have any ideas for how we can be better with this information, please go ahead and throw it in the chat. There's a lot of great information, but we also want to hear from you all. So please throw it in the chat if you have any questions. All right, so I don't see any questions. So we'll continue to move on. So here are our NCAA sports. We have a number of both men and women sports. And so you'll actually see my email here at the bottom. And that's because I am the athlete admissions officer. So if you're interested in, becoming a recruited athlete and you're not being recruited right now, the best way to get recruited is to reach out to the coaching staff. And you can generally find their information on goarmywestpoint.com. That is where you'll find their information because they'll have their rosters as well as their coaching staff for you to reach out to and provide anything that you can to become a recruited athlete. Once you are a recruited athlete and the sports team that we have here has decided that they are interested in recruiting you, then you'll work with myself as the athlete admissions officer to help you through your application. And it's important that if you have any questions throughout your time and you are a recruited athlete, that you do reach out to me because I can answer any questions that you may have. And if I can't answer them, I can definitely get you the answer for those questions. So I see we have a question. Does the prep program work the same as far as classes? So we do have a prep program, and they do have their own course load, which will look like your basic course load with math, English, science, history. So it will generally look the same, but it won't be the same courses. There are courses that are meant to prepare cadets USMAP's cadets to come to West Point and be successful when they do get to the academic course load when they get to West Point. That was a great question. If you have any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. So like I said, not everybody will be a D1 NCAA athlete. So if you're not an athlete please feel free to join some of our club sports, or you'll participate in intramural sports. Once you get here, you'll be able to try out for some of our club sports. We have a number of different club sports that you may have the opportunity to participate in. But if you don't do club sports and you're more interested in intramural sports, then there are those as well. Those are not as competitive, but if you ask any cadet that's competing in intramural sports, they'll say that it is the most competitive thing that they've ever done. Because we have a lot of competitive cadets here, and everybody wants to win, so they're all trying to be the best at whatever sport they're playing, whether it's wrestling, swimming, handball, you name it. Cadets are competitive, and that shows in our sports. So we have a question from Sarah. When should high school students begin reaching out to coaches? So coaches, the NCAA generally has, a threshold for when they can reach out to high school, students to recruit. But if you're interested in reaching out to a coach, your best bet is to start reaching out, after your sophomore year, so that they can, put you on their radar if you're someone that they're interested in. We do have sports at the prep school. There are a number of different sports that prep candidates will play, but not every sport that you see here at West Point is at the prep school. Okay, so next we'll talk about your military journey. So most of the academic year is meant to focus specifically on academics. We want you to focus on your classes and do well in your classes. But during the summer, you will have the opportunity to do, military training, good military training. Your first summer will, be cadet basic training, and that's what we call BEAST. So if you hear BEAST, that's cadet basic training, and that's your first initial 6-week here as we, indoctrinate you into West Point and what, the Army has to offer. As I say, what I say when I give these briefs is that each year it gets better. You'll have more fun each year, and you'll learn a lot more each year, which will allow you to, build on the things that you have learned and allow them to help you when you graduate from West Point, when you do become, a commissioned officer in the United States Army. So next is your yearling year, your sophomore year, is cadet field training. That is when you'll get more introduction to more military things, to include land navigation, more military equipment, a number of different things that will give you more tools as a Army officer. And then in your sophomore or your junior and senior year, or Cal or first year, you'll get more leadership training. You see a number of different leadership trainings here on the slides, but what I'll highlight is one of my favorites that I participated in when I was a cadet here. I did cadet troop leader training. Cadet troop leader training is an opportunity for you to get to shadow a second lieutenant that's in the Army. When I was here at West Point, I was super interested in engineers. I was an engineer major, so it seemed logical that I'd be interested in engineers. So when I did CTLT, or cadet troop leader training, I went to Germany actually to shadow a second lieutenant who was a platoon leader in an engineer company. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to be an engineer coming out of West Point. So there are a number of different leadership opportunities that you'll be able to participate in throughout your time, and this is when we give you the best training, the best leadership training throughout your time here at West Point. It's in your Cal and first year. You get a little taste of leadership, in your sophomore year and your yearling year, but your best, opportunity to strive to be better as a leader is in your junior and senior year. So you'll also have a number of different opportunities throughout your time here. There are a number of broadening opportunities, which are outside of the norm when it comes to, your academic time. There are a number of opportunities to do semester abroads to a number of different countries, but not only a number of countries, different countries, to other service academies. There are a number of different internships, not only to the White House, not only to congressional offices, but an internship that I did when I was here is I worked with the United States Corps of Engineers to learn about how to be an actual engineer. I worked with project managers. I worked with professional engineers that were doing real life work as an engineer. And then, there's some other military qualification schools that you will have the opportunities to take while you're here. Airborne and Air Sergeant are not the only schools that you have the ability to take. There's a number of different schools, and how well you do here gives you more opportunities to do some of those schools. So with that, I'll take a pause, and I will answer any questions in the chat. So I see a question. So if a student received an early decision admission from a college before West Point appointment, what should the student do with the early decision? That's a good question, and it's a tough question. It's and I hate giving this answer because it depends on what you want to do. If West Point is something that you want to do and you want to strive to do, then I would say wait to go to West Point and try to get an offer from West Point. The tough part about early decisions is that they're early decisions for a reason. So I would say depending on what you want is kind of the best way to make that decision. It depends on where you want to go. So that's tough to answer from me to you, but I think that's a personal decision that you'll have to make. But complete your application as early as possible because we are working to get offers out to candidates as soon as possible. So what it takes to join the long gray line, it takes a few different things. It takes excellent academic ability, leadership potential, as well as overall fitness. And we want to see that in a well-formed cadet candidate, not someone who's just good at academics, not someone who's just good at leadership, not someone who's just good at fitness. We want to see the overall candidate look good in these three things. So we had a question about eligibility requirements. Here are your eligibility requirements if you are applying. You must be a U.S. citizen or become a U.S. citizen when you do get here. You must be between 17 and 23 years old the day you enroll. You cannot be married and you cannot be pregnant or have any legal obligation to support a child. So for those who haven't, started their application, the time is now to start with your application. So it's important to start and complete the candidate questionnaire. It's important to have all these things that will allow you to complete the questionnaire all at once. So that includes your social security number. You have to know where you're from, your congressional district, and have all these things at hand because these are all the things that start your application and let us know what your application has to offer as far as the three things that we mentioned here earlier. And so this is what we look at when we look at the whole candidate. So it's important to know that there's a few different things that we look at, and we look at the candidate as a whole. 60% of your application comes from your academics. So it's important to do well in school and study. And that comes from your GPA and your standardized test scores. The SAT is required as well as the ACT with writing. The next big bulk of your application comes from your leadership capabilities. So what we'll do is look at school official evaluations, which are generally what we call letters of recommendations, but they're all digital. They'll have to come from a math teacher, an English teacher, a science teacher, but the science teacher has to be a physics or chemistry teacher, and then a PE teacher. That PE teacher can be your coach, but they have to be your PE teacher or PE certified to give you that SOE. As well as an interview that will tell us, what what we know, what capabilities you have to be here at West Point, and if you're fit for West Point. And then there's your extracurricular activities. Your extracurricular activities, we like to see more. We like to see a few extracurricular activities, but you in leadership positions. So don't go out there and do 10 different extracurricular activities just to say that you've done your extracurricular activities. Try and become the leaders in those extracurricular activities. Try and be part of the student government. Try and do Boys and Girls Club. Try to be the president of your yearbook club. Those things show us that you're not only being active in extracurricular activities, but you're also becoming leaders in them. And then the final thing is a candidate fitness assessment. It's only 10%, but it's still a requirement to receive an offer of admissions here at West Point. So you do have to pass the candidate fitness assessment, which is a six-part test testing your physical capabilities. One thing that we do require is for you to submit videos of two of the events during this test. That is the push-ups and then the pull-ups or flexed arm hang. We do require that you submit videos, and that's so we can see how well your form is when you're doing those push-ups and pull-ups and flexed arm hang. There's two additional parts of this qualification of this application. There's the nomination, which we'll get to, and then the medical qualification. Other than those two, the application deadline is 31 January. The application is 31 January, but we want to see you do it as soon as possible. We have a number of candidates that have completed their applications already, and we are now in October. So it's important to do your application early. It's important to show us here at West Point that you really want to be here and get that application done before the deadline. Because once the deadline hits, and if you're missing anything, then you are out of luck at that point. So this is a good point for me to take any questions. Are prep students eligible for D1 sports? So when prep students come to West Point, they are eligible for D1 sports. I see a question about athletes having adequate time for academics. Yes, athletes do have adequate time for academics. Most of our sports teams will have some sort of study hall where they will use, teachers that are interested in helping that team to help those cadets while they are in that study hall. So there's a number of different means that we use to give cadet athletes more time for studying and more focused time for studying. So the medical qualification is a lengthy process. It's important to get your application done as soon as possible, so that you can, if necessary, you can get access to your medical qualification and your medical examinations. The deadline for the medical portion is April 15th, and it is a long process. So once you get access to schedule your appointments as soon as you can, just so we have the ability to receive your medical examinations, and DoDMERB will receive your medical examinations, and they will make an assessment on what they see in that documentation. So here's another major part of your application, and that's the nomination. There are two different types of nominations. There's the service-connected nomination and the congressional nomination. We always encourage you to apply to all nominations that you can apply for. And so if you meet some of the criteria for a service-connected nomination, please apply for that. It's important to apply for that as well as your congressional nominations. The congressional nominations, everyone can apply for. You can apply through 4 different ways. That's through your congressional representative, your 2 senators, as well as the vice president. If you haven't done that now, please do it now. A lot of the offices' deadlines are approaching or have passed already. So if you haven't done that, please go to these websites you see on your screen. house.gov and senate.gov to see what those deadlines are and see what those requirements are. And you can never go wrong with Googling, your district and academy nominations, and that'll send you straight to the website that will give you the requirements for that information. So again, this is what you have to take a look at, is the application strategy. It's important to be proactive. I've said multiple times through this, presentation, start early, complete it early, and do as much as you can early. If you find that your teachers are slacking on your school official evaluations, or there's something missing, reach out to those teachers. Make sure you let them know that you're putting their information in there, because sometimes we find, candidates will put a teacher's name in there and they have no idea that they've received this information. So have a conversation with your teachers. Apply to all nomination sources that you can, and it's important. Those deadlines are approaching. Train and take the CFA. It's not an easy test, but it's something that we like to see, especially because we are a school that requires a lot of physical fitness. Study. Study well in school, do well in your classes, but also prepare for the SAT and ACT, as well as seeking opportunities for leadership jobs, leadership experiences. That helps you prepare for the leadership that you will endure when you do get here. And then you have local field force that can help throughout your process of your application. And you can find your field force in your portal when you are going through your portal. And again, I'll highlight, the application deadline is 31 January, and then the medical deadline is April 15th. So those are important dates. And of course, don't wait till the last minute to do them, but they are our deadlines, so know them. Put them on your calendar because they are important dates. And finally, it's important to ask yourself a few things as you go through this application, because sometimes you might go through this application, you might realize West Point is not for you, but sometimes you may realize West Point is somewhere where I can develop some of these things. So not only ask yourself if you're a leader, ask yourself if you can become a leader. Ask yourself if you're mentally tough, but also ask yourself, can you become mentally tough? West Point is a place where we can build you to be better, and that's something that if you're not where you think you should be, or you're not where you want to be, West Point can bring you to that point, and we'll push you to that point and even further. So if you're interested in having a career as an Army officer and coming to the Premier Leadership Academy, then West Point is definitely for you. So another way to learn if West Point is for you is through our Summer Leaders Experience. So this is essentially a fast-paced program that gives you a little stint of academic classes, military training, physical fitness, as well as intramural athletics. And it's a week during the summer that'll give you the ability to do this and learn a little bit about West Point. And so when does it apply? So you can apply during the beginning of next year if you are a junior. And then when does it happen? It happens for a week in June. And what we want to see is you have standardized test scores to be considered for SLE for that summer. And so with that, I will head to our chat to see if we have any questions. Before I leave you, please feel free. If you're on here, you're obviously seeing what we have to offer on Facebook, but also go to our West Point admissions page on Instagram and YouTube, and always stay connected to our West Point admissions website, because a lot of new things will come out of that website with new information and good information for your application. So with that, I'll go to our chat and see what we have as far as questions. So we have a question about having issues with the candidate questionnaire. So if you go to the West Point website and click Apply Now, you should be able to see a screen that says Steps to Application. And one of those steps there will be the candidate questionnaire. So if you're having trouble with the original link, try going through that link, and that should send you to the candidate questionnaire to allow you to fill out the application. All right, we have another question. If you submit an application, can you update it later if you retake the SAT or ACT? Absolutely. So something that I didn't mention is that, we will super score your SAT and ACT scores. So if you take the ACT or SAT 5 times, we'll take the best of your scores and have that be your score for your application. I have a question that says, is the PE instructor who fulfills the SOE the same person who oversees the CFA? That person can oversee the CFA. It's probably the easiest thing that you can do is get them to do your CFA as well as your PE SOE. So I have a question about SLE. So when you say junior year for your SLE application, would this mean that they would attend SLE in the summer before their senior year? And that is correct. So once you have the ability to open an application, then you'll be able to essentially apply for SLE, which will be that summer. So it's a good question. All right, so I'm looking for more questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you feel like there's ways we can do this better, feel free to throw them in the chat as well. We're always looking for new information that we can give to you through these virtual events. So please throw those in the chat. So I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. I'll stay on for one more minute. And again, feel free to reach out to us. We are here as your admissions officers to, help you and get through this process because we know it's a long process. So if there are not any more questions, we will sign off. And we appreciate everybody coming out, listening in, and we hope to see you soon.